Dantana. Dantana.
Yo, what up? Happy Friday, everyone. September 15th edition of the SMT Podcast Friday Show. I got a panel with me.
Yo, what's going on, everybody?
I got B, I got EM. What
Yo.
Good stuff, man. Happy Friday, guys. Thanks for stopping by the panel today and offering some objective commentary and insights and opinions. You know, it was a pretty busy week. A lot happened in the wireless industry with respect to, I'd say, like iPhone stuff, right? Everybody's kind of looking for the best iPhone deal. I did some videos on that. Also, that T-Mobile story with Tillman Fiber, that made some news, and I want to get your guys' opinions on it, if you don't mind.
I'm all here for all the conversations, brother.
I had to grab me something cold, man. I got me what is this? Like a sparkling ice caffeine black raspberry. Let's
Is
see.
it like one of those sparkling water type deals?
Dude, it's delicious though.
Those are pretty solid.
Yeah, man. Oh, snap. I see some peeps. I got some members in the house. Oh, big shout out to Kevin. Appreciate the super sticker. Thank you, man. What a great way to start the show. Hashtag mod squad. Hashtag 2live crew. Hashtag replay crew. If you're watching this on replay, see the homie MS is in the house. Hardcore weather is here. Raging Dusty. South Joe. Mark Smith. Trex. TJ. David Tech Guy 32 making his usual stop. The homie Dantana. The beats that you hear right now, Mr. Dantana. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Joe Landy's here, man. Happy Friday to all. As I hit my ice pour. Stay caffeinated, my friends. Troy Hex is here. Nice. Welcome. All right, guys. Let's turn the music
coffee,
down.
So
Oh, you got a hot coffee or cold coffee? Hold up, man. I got to know.
Hot coffee.
Yeah, I prefer hot coffee. I don't do the cold coffee too often. It's got to be a hot day if I'm doing that, man.
As much as people like to dog on Starbucks, I really like the nitro cold brew, but that's about it.
I think I've had it. It's actually pretty good. Troy, the brand of coffee that I have, I get this local brand called Van Roy. They're a Cleveland coffee company. If you're asking about the energy drink I'm drinking or whatever, just one of those ice drinks. Ice is the brand. What up, Term? Let's see what else we got going on. Sipping my Waffle House coffee. Nice. Mark is at the Waffle House, man. Listening to the podcast. Nice. On the live stream. All right, I want to start with let's start with this Ted Cruz story, dude.
Oh,
it's not
boy.
often politicians make it on the show, but I don't know, man. I kind of agree with him, dog. And that's not typical, dog. I typically don't do the political thing, but I feel strongly about this. I think he's right about it. All right, so here it is. Ted Cruz champions fixed wireless for BEAD deployments. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas released a new report Friday urging regulators to take another look at satellite and fixed wireless as they dole out billions of dollars in government subsidies. Cruz's report also warns of the high potential for waste, fraud, and abuse in $42.5 billion broadband equity access and deployment program. All right, so outside of the claims of fraud, which, I can't corroborate that. How the hell should I know what the hell's going on there? They can investigate that if they want. But with respect to BEAD dollars going to fixed wireless, I think that's worth discussing. 20-page report saying that the BEAD is ignoring the reality that alternative technologies like fixed wireless and satellite may be better suited to different consumers and geographies. I don't really feel compelled to read much else outside of the fact that I think I just want to say I agree. I think more fixed wireless BEAD dollars should exist in terms of the money's going there. I don't know how much money we need going towards satellite. I'm a little bit more reluctant to go that direction because of the limitations and the technology ceiling that has, and the trouble. But terrestrial fixed wireless has proven time and time again to be a legitimate home internet solution. I don't know how you guys feel here on the panel. I don't know how the folks feel in the live chat, but I think after the last year, maybe you could argue 2 years, national network providers have proven that fixed wireless access is a legitimate competitor. We're not here to say that fiber is obsolete. We're not here to say that, fixed wireless is better than fiber. That is not the case. What I'm here to say is you may be able to stretch the BEAD dollars better in some situations through fixed wireless, where you might run, say, for example, a few thousand miles of BEAD fiber might cover up several states with fixed wireless coverage. You know what I'm saying? So let me get B in here and get his thoughts and impressions on Mr. Cruz's kind of push for fixed wireless to get BEAD bucks. Or maybe B isn't ready. Let me go with EM.
I was gonna say wah, wah, wah. um, so here's my main concern. It, with the BEAD funding, with the way that it's structured right now, there's a strict set of guidelines that have to be followed to guarantee that customers get fiber to the prem. Fixed wireless, the definition of fixed wireless is very broad and can be deployed in many different ways. Some more reliable than others, some more higher bandwidth capable than others. So, if anything, I feel like the opening up BEAD funding to FWA almost creates an even higher potential for waste, fraud, and abuse, in my opinion. And especially because as you look at the way that the main MNOs have decided to implement fixed wireless, mainly T-Mobile, you're not getting any sort of guaranteed quality of service, right? You're getting excess capacity, and it's like it's Pandora's box as to whether your experience is gonna be good, bad, sometimes okay. Like the one thing I really liked about BEAD as a program when it was drafted up and implemented was that it was guaranteed fiber to the prem. And I can almost bet my bottom dollar that the minute they open up BEAD funding to other types of access for customers, your fiber to the prem stuff is going to stop because it's way cheaper to do fixed wireless.
So that makes this even more ironic that he was talking about fraud and then brought up fixed wireless.
Well, I mean, think about it, right? Like fiber to the prem is very, very expensive, which is why the subsidies exist in the first place. You open this up to another type of technology deployment, yes, it might be viable, but you can almost guarantee that fiber to the prem rollouts instantly stop and they start pivoting to something else that's cheaper.
Yeah, but you still need fiber within a fixed wireless build, right? So, doing fixed wireless over, low capacity grade circuits, kind of a losing proposition. But that's where I think the beat comes into play. I think you kind of get this wholesale, multi-purpose, multi-joint venture type, situation through B dollars. And then in those instances where the fiber kind of is difficult to get to, the precarious positions, legitimate fixed wireless can become an option. And I'm talking about not like Verizon sending you a gateway. I'm talking about real fixed wireless companies who
Like
are
point to
going to
point.
install, yes, who are going to install on-premise equipment on your property, on your home, whatever, and giving you 300, 500 down, 100, 200 megabit up dedicated. Like that's your QoS, QCI, however you want to look at it, right? So, yeah, I'm not looking at this as, like Verizon, T-Mobile restricted to just doing it over the mobile network. I'm talking about legitimate fiber to the premise competitor, right?
Yeah,
It's
but still, I mean, like that. Even just you talking about it, you can that can be interpreted in so many different ways, and the
it's just
reliability
so
is just
hard, dude. The fiber to the premise is just so tough.
it
I
is.
mean,
But once it's
So,
there, it's there.
it's great, but I literally watched my neighborhood get done. It took a year, dude.
so Sneed, I apologize for my tardiness. I'm sorry about that. I had to take a call, but the conversation that you guys are having are exactly why I feel like um, regulators and people in seats like Congress kind of need to understand the industries that they're attempting to regulate before they can start to regulate. We got a lot of people sitting in DC who have no idea about the industry and yet are trying to or are tasked by virtue of their job with trying to regulate these industries. They don't have anything. They don't have anything cool about them. So that's unfortunate. But to answer the question, in my opinion, um, I think EM is definitely on point with his assessment. It makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, I also kind of agree with Cruz as well. To what Sneed was saying, I kind of agree with him. Um, Fiber to the Prim is the gold standard. Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And that's what, if you had to pick, you want to pick that. But it is extremely expensive to deploy. And if you're trying to get, you know, reliable, decent internet connectivity to pretty much every zip code in America, you're going to have to start thinking of ways to deploy that without best case scenario technology being deployed. It's really the only way. There are only a few industries in this, country that are required to serve, every single zip code, and pretty much it's like, your utility companies, your communications companies, and the post office. That's about it. Everybody else can pick and choose. So by virtue of that, it's extremely expensive. And unfortunately, in this country, those are the industries that people want to pay 32 cents a stamp for example. So, the money has to come from somewhere. But also, you have to be judicious with how you deploy and what you deploy. So, eventually, there will come a day, I think Cruz is right to open up that for discussion, where you have a situation where fixed wireless access helps to bridge that last mile gap that America is going to be faced with and is going to continue to be faced with. Because fiber to the prim, let's just be honest, guys, it's not coming to every zip code in America. It's just not. $42 billion isn't even close to being enough. It's just
Oh,
not.
no, it's not
The,
even close.
yeah, the federal government can't afford to give it all in one lump sum. They're going to have to do this over a span of a decade plus at least in order to get this to every zip code in America. So fixed wireless access can help to bridge that gap a lot faster and help to bring that service delivery to people a whole lot faster than just saying, okay, fiber to the premise got to be the industry standard. But I'll add this as a caveat. If I'm a regulator and I truly understand the industry, then I'm, to EM's point, going to require a QoS. Okay, so we're going to open this up, but we're going to require you to guarantee a certain level of service for this particular product. We're going to define what it is. So, for example, the federal government and the FCC, they have, 25 down and 3 up. That was their standard for
20 years
what
ago.
you could, yeah, exactly. That was their standard for a while of what you consider, this is high speed internet. And if you didn't meet that, then you couldn't market yourself as such. So, you know, to the point of fixed wireless, you have to offer or you have to require some sort of QoS in order to be able to hold people accountable for the product that they deliver to that particular customer base. So that's really what it's going to take, and it's kind of a compromise between Sneed's point and Cruz's point, and then also what EM is saying. It's kind of merging them together because we're not going to be able to, deliver America. We're not going to be able to see, what everybody's looking for with just fiber to the prim. We're just not going to be able to do it. So America can't afford it. Unfortunately, it's expensive. So.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, B. All right. I actually want to pivot to the story in a shocking turn of events. Absolutely stunning and shocking. Verizon says no lead contamination at question sites.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Shocker, right? Kind of, I think we all expected it. We knew it was BS. That Wall Street Journal report, absolutely ridiculous. I have no idea what type of games they're playing, but they should be investigated for this. Verizon has told Representative Pat Ryan, Democrat of New York, that 3 sites with allegedly dangerous decades-old telco cabling encased with lead are safe. In July, the Wall Street Journal, created a report saying that Verizon and AT&T and other telcos were operating old lead-sheathed cables on poles underwater or in earth that could decay and which, according to Wall Street Journal, may pose a public health risk. A letter from Robert Fisher, Verizon's senior vice of federal government relations, claims that tests conducted by third-party experts showed that sites referenced in the WSJ article are not dangerous. Findings from Wappingers Falls, New York. Lead levels at the Temple Park site in Ryan's district were consistent with the New York State Department of Health's conclusion that soil lead levels generally similar to lead levels in background samples and do not pose a public health risk. At each location tested at the falls, the average soil lead level is lower than the residential soil lead threshold levels of 400 milligrams per kilogram set by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. At the Coal Center, PA, the average soil lead level is lower than soil to the groundwater remediation standard of 450 milligrams per kilogram and soil remediation standard of 500 milligram per kilogram set by the Pennsylvania State Department of Environmental Protection. Same thing at West Orange, below the standard. The letter did not identify the organization that conducted the tests. The third-party firm collected and tested discrete soil samples within a set of soil sampling units. So, yeah, a nothing burger. Goes to show you how some people will try to run game. You know, we all questioned the Wall Street Journal. You know, anytime you get money people involved, you got ulterior motives. And I'm not really a tinfoil hat guy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means. But the only people that seem to make out of this to win would have been people trying to drive down a stock or drive up a stock, right? And that literally felt like what it was happening. And I don't know if that's the case, but literally nobody can prove that there is lead contamination from these cables. Nobody. Not the EPA, not the states, not Verizon, not AT&T. Wall Street Journal's claims still cannot be verified. Here we are. EM, let me bring you in.
I don't think anybody's surprised. I think this is just another clickbait. I got to get my impressions because these media companies are dying. Nobody's paying attention to them anymore. And I hope everyone bought while they were down. That's all I'll say.
I think since these stories initially dropped the shares, right, the ticker, I think both AT&T and Verizon have, I don't know, come up a little bit, an additional maybe 5 or 10%. So if it was a legitimate concern, wouldn't it have stayed down or dropped lower?
Yeah, you'd think, right? Like,
I'm just trying to use like common sense. I'm just trying to use logic, you know?
Yeah, you don't just like drop a bomb like that and then everyone forgets about it the next day. Although I guess in this news cycle maybe people do, but uh, the only problem is that the damage in perception to these two companies, especially Verizon and AT&T, was done, and I feel like now no matter what, like there's still going to be people who maybe don't see this resolution to this, right? Because not everyone's reading Telecompetitor, but a lot of people read the Wall Street Journal. So, I hope
Well,
that
the money people read the Wall Street Journal,
which is the problem.
Who controls the market, right?
And as long as this narrative, or I guess Verizon's response to this, and AT&T when they get their testing done, if they are doing testing,
they did Lake Tahoe. They said there's no contamination.
Then they need to start screaming from the rooftops.
Every earnings conference, every investor conference, they continue to say the same thing. We can't produce any contamination tests. We've paid firms. We invite others to test it. Nobody's able to produce any, positive tests.
And I mean, this is just annoying, man. I
see,
again,
where's Wall Street Journal now with a follow-up saying, no, we have the data.
It's defamation is what it is. So, and that's just my personal opinion, but that's what the very definition of defamation is. So I guess we just have to wait on the EPA to respond. I'm sure that the EPA will do its own testing. Which, if
that's
I
all
was,
that's left, though,
Verizon, AT&T, all those guys, yeah,
that's all that's left.
Let the government, like once the government goes in, they conduct their own tests. If the government finds something, then I'm sure they'll do whatever it is that they have to do to mitigate whatever it is that the EPA tells them they have to mitigate. But if they find nothing, if it substantiates what Verizon and of course I guess what AT&T has also said as far as their testing out of Lake Tahoe, that was defamation. Period. That was defamation. You made a very, very, very big accusation that cost two companies billions of dollars. That was defamation.
I think it's
That's
ironic.
one of
I
the
think it's
frustrating.
ironic. B, I think it's ironic that the carriers are inviting others to test, and then the Wall Street Journal has no follow up and nothing to say, or they're
Well,
not
that's
even
what happens.
refuting anything.
The media oftentimes doesn't have to be accountable. They don't have to be accountable because of, kind of the way the Constitution is written. They don't have to tell the truth. It seems like there's no recourse. There's no sort of accountability. That's like the only industry in America that has zero accountability for what it is that they write, for what it is that they produce. It's very frustrating. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I am. I don't know, but it certainly doesn't seem far off what I'm saying. So, it is what it is. Um, I'm sure that AT&T and Verizon probably aren't going to sue or anything like that. But if they did, in my opinion, they'd be well within their right.
Let me get Dennis in here, who just popped in. Dental, what is going on, my friend?
Not much. It's like 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning. I fell asleep. I won't lie. It's 2 in the morning. But it looks like we're talking about the lead issues with DSL. Is that what's cooking?
Yeah, the lead cables, man.
Yeah. I think that if I think that AT&T and Verizon are definitely liable to be sued. We've known about lead being a problem for a long, long time.
Yeah, but Dennis, nobody can prove that there's lead there.
Oh, is that what we found out? Sorry.
Well, like Verizon has done, they've had testing done. So has AT&T. They continue to say we've tested these sites where the Wall Street Journal said there was contamination, and we can't produce the contamination. The Wall Street Journal has not refuted Verizon or AT&T's claims of denial. And all that's really left, I guess, is just EPA intervention. If there is indeed concern, wouldn't you think that they would intervene?
I don't know, man. EPA can be pretty slow to intervene on anything. I mean, just to give you perspective, Sneed, like where I grew up at, it took like literally 20 years to replace lead pipes that were used for water lines.
Oh, damn.
So, I mean, I don't know, man. It's kind of like, because there's a lot of things, right? Like there's a lot of things, like even in Europe, it's not even US specific, right? There's a lot of things when it comes to health issues that like government's very slow to catch up. Like I'll give you an example. Nitrites that are used for like processed foods like hot dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There has been numerous studies, for example, showing that eating like processed foods that contain nitrites are linked to various forms of cancer, right? Like there's thousands of studies that have been done on this for like 40, 50 years now. And yet it's only just now that we're having like, or they're having like new discussions about like the health impacts that nitrates had. And all the while you have like lobbyists and stuff like that saying like, oh, like Big Meat saying like, no, it's not linked to cancer. No, it's really not that bad. It's like, or like they're denying it. And the playbook looks a lot like what Marlboro did or Philip and Morris did with cigarettes, right? With like, is nicotine addictive? Is nicotine causing cancer? I feel like companies will always feign ignorance or liability because they don't want to get in trouble or they don't want to get fined or they don't want to have to pay the money. Like there's not like a motivation here. Like companies aren't typically very virtuous. So there very well might not be maybe contamination right now, right? Going full circle on this, there very well might not be contamination right now at this moment, but having those lead lines remain there is still problematic to the environment as a whole because they will break down. The sun, the hot and the cold, the different weather impacts will wear down, those cables, and they will end up in the environment at some point. And they should.
So they need scheduled removal at some point, right?
Yeah, like they should be scheduled removed. It should be happening a little bit quicker, but I don't see any political motivation to make that happen anytime soon unless people complain about it. And well, I don't think most people are paying attention to this even in the news unless they live in those towns or like nationally. I don't see this even being like a national issue right now in the social sphere unless there's someone like us or they live in those towns.
All right,
I think
Dennis.
Dennis makes a lot of solid points. A lot of solid points. I agree. But I'll just add this. I'm sorry to interrupt me. I'll just add this. Um, I think people are a huge part of the reason, consumers and businesses and the government as well, are a huge reason why those lead lines are still in place in many areas. There are still people using those copper lines. So if people want it gone, then they can migrate. If they choose not to, then they're part of the problem. It's really that simple. It's not as simple as just
Government.
saying, okay, businesses are corrupt and they want to kill everybody. That's, in my opinion, that's a lazy argument. It's a lazy argument. Um,
Well,
it's
that's not
very
accurate.
expensive.
Why the hell would you want to kill people? That doesn't even make any sense. What
Exactly.
you're
When you're trying to make money, they want to kill everybody.
that's
But at the
horrible.
same time,
Businesses don't want to kill the people that make the money, but they don't necessarily care about keeping you healthy either, is what I'll say.
I can almost guarantee
well,
there's a Wall Street Journal office somewhere in the United States that has a lead copper line
Right.
coming into it. You
Right.
absolutely.
bet your bottom
And the
dollar.
same, yeah, and the same goes for the consumer. So to me, yes, I agree. Businesses have a long history of screwing people over. I completely agree. But I would be remiss if I were to not point out the obvious fact that a lot of people are the cause of their own demise, or people oftentimes slow down progress by virtue of not wanting to move to the next generation of technology.
Being unresponsive.
Yeah.
Right. No.
No, but
Yeah,
what I'm trying to
and I
say
mean,
is that what I'm trying to say is that businesses don't really have a moral anything. There is the only moral businesses have is money. Does it make money?
that's not true. That's not true.
Like
That's not
at the,
that's
no,
not true.
Yeah, but it wouldn't make sense to invite lawsuits.
what I'm saying.
Go ahead. Dennis.
Yeah, I'm not. So like what I'm saying is that is the end all real be all for private companies is making money, right? Like they don't necessarily, they're not going to do something that gets them in trouble, right? If there's a fine, or if it impacts the brand, which ultimately goes back to hurting the potential of them making money, they're not going to go out of their way to do the opposite of that would hurt their brand, right? That's why you see companies like Apple, focusing on being good for the environment, because it's something they can use to sell. It's something that consumers became aware of. It's nice that it's helping the environment, but if it didn't make them money, or there wasn't some, or I guess on the opposite end of it, if it lost the money to do so, then they wouldn't do it, right? Like businesses don't care about your best interest. They just care about whatever it is that they think it is that you care about, if it helps them in the long run of making money.
I disagree. I disagree. And again, I know we're just swapping opinions, and there's no real truth or anything like that. I don't want to try to cast aspersions, but to make that argument pretty much states that the people who work for that business are not people who are in the communities that business serves. Those people clock out, or they go home, and they become consumers. So you can't separate the two, because consumers are within businesses, and businesses are within communities, and they are consumers themselves. So to try to that narrative has always been a little bit ridiculous, because again, like you have people with warm blood running down their veins working in the very businesses that we as a society oftentimes like to attack. Then as soon as we finish attacking them, we go clock into those very same businesses. So like, I mean, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
There's employees that definitely have, individual employees definitely have emotions within a business, right? It's the reason why you tend to see work groups inside of a company trying to petition their values for different things. And certain companies will have like little like contribution days and stuff like that, with like, wear a t-shirt, $5 gets donated to your charity or whatever, right? Like there's things that can happen because there's individuals that have morals. But on the grander scale, what I'm trying to point out here is a business is not a person. A business is, at the end of the day, a big amalgamation of different values, and as such, a lot of things just end up not happening, right? Like it's like how in America, right? Like I think most people can agree, it's like no one should go hungry in America, right? Like I think everyone agrees, like starvation is bad, right? Like no one should go hungry in America, but at the end of the day, like, what does the American government do? They have like food stamp programs. They have a few different things, but it's not necessarily going that 100th extra mile to stop like hunger, right? Like nothing, the government doesn't necessarily care that like there are still people that are hungry if it doesn't impact their constituents or their getting reelected, right? Like the individual people, right? Like they might emotionally care, they might say they care, but like the political energy to do something new or try something new to solve that massive problem isn't happening, right? And it's the same way with things like the lead lines or whatever. Like there has to be a huge igniting factor under people's butts, or in the case of companies, a large amount of money being lost for it to really become a high priority item compared to some other thing that is going to make them money or make them look good. Because also on the note of things, you know, they have stakeholders and other people that is their driving factor, and that is what they care about if they're large enterprises. So I don't know.
So in an effort to address exactly what, you know, is being said, I think Verizon, AT&T, for example, should do exactly what they did with 3G. This is the date right here, December 31 of, I don't know, 2025. We're shutting off the 3G network. You have a choice. We can send you this, we can do this, we can do that. But that would make people decide what it is that they're going to do. Because in general, based on what we know about these networks, they're very expensive to maintain and keep in service. So to assume or to make an accusation that running and maintaining all of these multiple networks is somehow benefiting these companies just doesn't make a lot of sense. So to me, set a date, give people time to migrate. If they don't, turn them off. And then from there, decommission the networks and be done with it. And people can decide for themselves how they want to communicate. And that includes the government. Many of the very government entities that we're talking about right now, just like Ian was saying, they probably have copper lines. Many of the businesses and many of the consumers. So this whole consumer versus business thing, I don't buy into it, especially not in relation to this particular argument, because there are consumers who are using copper lines today. Are they part of the problem or are they not? Because they probably have an option to migrate
They
if they want
definitely
to,
are part of
but
the
they don't.
problem. They definitely are part of the problem with respect to maintaining those things. But I think at this point, it's just wait and see. We're going to have to see how those responses go. And I think those folks become culpable as part of the problem if they don't make Verizon's job of shutting it down, decommissioning, and removing it easier. Right. That's the end game, is
Absolutely.
getting that stuff out of harm's way. Right. So
Absolutely.
we'll see how it
Absolutely.
plays out.
Good
Let's
discussion.
go to the next. Yeah, let's go to the next story. This one actually is kind of interesting. One of the best deals you can get on the iPhone 15 is actually at Dish. Who would have thought that they would offer, I guess, a better deal
I
than
I would have
T-Mobile,
thought
maybe?
because I've known for about 2 months.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, nobody else had that information, Dennis, so you can't blame us for not knowing.
I know.
All
That's
right.
fair.
So Dish
Hold it
has a
back
really,
on us, Benny.
I
Hold
know
it
he's
back on us,
holding out,
man.
man, holding out. Um, Dish's deal for this iPhone comes with a phone plus service combination. What's referred to as a membership gives Boost Infinite members a value of up to 1,000 off the new iPhone 15, and that would get you the latest iPhone every year at no extra cost. Unlimited talk, text, and data, $60 a month. The service plan, it says here, 30 gigs per month, may experience slower speeds after the 30 gigs, requires a 3-year device financing agreement, which kind of seems kind of weird because it says that you can get a new iPhone every year. So I'm not sure about the wordplay there. But in and of itself, $60 a month, new iPhone, and service. All right. What are your guys' thoughts on Dish's approach to selling the iPhone and kind of offering it with a service and phone bundling? Let me start with EM.
I think this is a fledgling attempt to get people to switch to Boost Infinite. I think their bigger problem, again, is still their branding, but like it's an iPhone promo, I guess. I, I don't know. Every
What do you think
carrier's
of the
offering
what do you think of the
deals.
construct I'm saying?
I guess it's not a bad. It's not bad. My view on phones is buy them unlocked. Don't buy them through your service provider. Don't buy them on a monthly credit. But I think the pricing's attractive, so I think it'll be a home run for people who don't necessarily care who their service provider is and just care about the phone. But I don't see this making any impact to their customer acquisition problem.
No trade-in required.
Yeah,
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Sprint offered no trade-in required free phones all the time, and they still died.
Oh god. Let me get B in here on this one. EM checked out of this deal. B, what do you think?
I mean, it's a great deal for consumers. I just don't see how it solves their profitability problem. I mean, Jesus Christ, man, how they gonna make money?
What I mean, what's the phone worth? $40 a month? So or whatever. I don't know. Up to 1,000 over 3 years.
So what's that? $20 a month? And as far as
Right.
revenue,
So
how much of that is profit? I mean, how much are they gonna keep? We're gonna make $2 a month.
well, revenue is service, and half the revenue is paying for the phone itself.
Exactly. So, I mean, how do you expect to turn a profit? How do you expect to return value back to the business? How are you gonna pay your bills? How are you gonna invest in the network?
I have heard that the service itself is actually truly unlimited high speed when you're on native dish. The 30 gigs is the roaming limitation. After 30 gigs of roaming, it becomes kind of like, throttled speed or data managed or whatever it is, speed managed. So, I don't know. Dennis, let me get you in here.
I think that deals like this aren't necessarily new for the space. We've seen Mint Mobile do subsidized devices similar to this, where if you purchase like a year in advance of plan, you can get the phone at a certain price. I think that this is one of the more aggressive offers, however, for iPhone specifically. And I think that it's actually going to have a very successful impact for Dish because most people aren't going to care about like the 30 gig cap or a lot of other little things. I see them probably acquiring probably somewhere in the ballpark of about maybe like I could see them converting probably something like 5,000 customers per week at some major Walmart locations or anywhere this promo is being done at. If there's any in-store presence, I'm assuming it's available in store, dealership locations,
I
whatever.
wonder if it includes Boost Mobile, like in terms of the same thing as well.
Well, anywhere they have a physical retail presence where there's going to be eyes on it and there's going to be a comparison, I can see it doing successful. If it's just siloed in some individual online place, I don't see it necessarily being as successful. I think this is one of those kind of deals where when you're talking about like an unknown brand, not unknown is the wrong word here, but when you're talking about like a brand that isn't like on the forefront of what people think about, being in proximity to a bigger company, it can sometimes be helpful. And I think this will do very well in like in a physical retail approach. I will also just say that I'm just going to leave it at this. While this deal is definitely exciting, I don't think all the excitement has ended quite yet when it comes to hearing about iPhone 15 deals. So I wouldn't necessarily pull the trigger on this particular one as if it's the end all be all, because there's still a lot of year left and still a lot of like.
Oh, you got holiday deals and promos too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Q4 stuff.
And I guess the last piece, specifically centering around our community, as EM touched on, if you're listening to this channel, you should probably just get an unlocked phone directly. And I'll verbiate what EM said on that piece. Average day person who only has one phone number probably isn't switching that often. I think they're fine with deals like these going through the carriers. If you're someone that's in this community, I already know for a fact you've probably at least got two numbers or jumping around a bit. And you should probably just get an unlocked phone directly from Apple. So that's my feelings on it.
Good stuff, Dennis. Hey, this next story, let me go ahead and switch stories here. Kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting this. I didn't actually two things. So AT&T being involved doesn't surprise me. Comcast getting involved kind of does. And then T-Mobile being replaced kind of surprised me as well. But I think the reason why you don't see like Verizon and T-Mobile in play here is because I think they're doing things themselves. But let me tell you guys some of the elements from the story. AT&T and Comcast are now the two marquee U.S. network operators participating in the 5G Open Innovation Lab, or known as 5G OI Lab, having joined the program this week as founding partners. The companies essentially replaced T-Mobile, which is no longer participating in the lab. It helped to launch in 2020. So this tells me that T-Mobile walked away from this. Does that mean funding is no longer available? They didn't see the benefit to their business. Maybe they want to do things kind of independently and on their own. But yeah, it looks like Comcast and AT&T will become the major players within this 5G innovation lab. According to AT&T's VP of Operators Strategic Alliances, as we continue forging ahead to realize 5G's full potential, it's important to work with the nimble startup and innovative community so we can move faster and solve real-world tech challenges more holistically and effectively for our customers. So after 4 years of working with international businesses in this 5G lab, T-Mobile basically walks away from this. This goes back to even when Neville Ray was president in technology, and they're just walking away. And then here's AT&T and Comcast. And I think the Comcast piece is interesting because Comcast is going to be building their own wireless network with respect to CBRS, and who knows what that's going to look like and how much they scale it. But really, I think the story here is that T-Mobile's out. Your thoughts, maybe, EM, on why you think they left and why AT&T and Comcast step in?
I think the investor is pushing hard on T-Mobile to start making money and, you know, shifting capital away from this type of like innovation think tank lab, whatever you want to call it, back into the business is probably something that T-Mobile's looking to do across the board. Um, or maybe it's that T-Mobile got what they wanted out of the lab and they no longer saw it beneficial, or maybe the lab asked for more money and AT&T and Comcast were like, "Yo, we'll go 50-50." I don't know. To me this seems like either T-Mobile is strapped for cash, or they're not looking to innovate in the 5G space anymore, or at least to the degree that they were before. And they just kind of want to coast right now and make money.
B, what do you think is the most likely reason here? If you had to guess, what's the most likely probable scenario and how this played out for T-Mobile to walk away, thus kind of creating a lane of opportunity for AT&T and Comcast?
This is a cost-cutting move by T-Mobile, 100%. It's a cost-cutting move. You got to decide what you want to pay for, and this didn't make the cut. It's really that simple. Like Ian said, they're in make money mode right now, and so that means, unfortunately, research and development kind of has to take a back seat. They don't have the money to afford this, and try to get in fiber, and try to buy more spectrum. They're doing all this stuff to laying off employees. This was a cost-cutting move by T-Mobile, 100%.
Let me get Dennis in here. Dennis, what do you think was the most likely reason for kind of the replacement of T-Mobile kind of walking away, and in comes AT&T and Comcast? I mean, I personally think this was wise for Comcast to get involved because they're going to start doing their own network, and AT&T kind of being part of it seems to make sense because obviously they're a wireless network operator that's got chops within the industry innovation and 5G networking.
So for the piece about T-Mobile leaving, I'm going to reference DOCSIS for a moment because, DOCSIS Labs, it's like a thing, in cable, right? In the cable space, right? Comcast is a big proponent, Spectrum's a big proponent. They invest heavily in DOCSIS, right? And then you have a lot of smaller cable providers out there, some that are family owned, like your Coxes or your Armstrong cables of the world. Not every single one of them contributes. Armstrong, for example, being one of them. But they still get the benefits and stuff of the research that's done. It's not
because they're within the industry, right?
What's up?
because they're within the industry.
Right. So they still get to take advantage of the technologies that get developed and the standards that get developed. So it's not like they lose out on anything by not investing, right? They still get to take advantage of the standards. They just don't have a say on what the standard is, I guess would be the way of doing things. I say what I'm saying because if we look at T-Mobile's deployment strategy, right? Generally speaking, over the last better part of a decade, T-Mobile's never really been one to really experiment with wireless tech, right? Like they didn't take huge risks like Sprint did with WiMAX. They don't tend to take huge risks on really anything with their network build, which is fine. They just follow whatever the industry standard is, and that's what they deploy. They don't like do crazy amounts of customization to it. They're not experimenting. So if that is like what T-Mobile's track record is, then the benefit of investing in the research behind this lab for them might not be something that's as clear cut, or maybe the return on the investment is something that's very protracted, that it makes it hard to sell to key stakeholders or investors. And so that was the motivation to reallocate those resources into something else. Maybe it's an in-house project that we don't know about yet that they're trying to fund. Maybe it's the cost cutting piece to, look good for shareholders. The specifics, I don't know, but I think it's just more of like one of those things specifically. As far as Comcast coming in, it doesn't surprise me that they come in because Comcast participates in a lot of things that consumers don't realize when it comes to funding R&D, not even just in like the cable space or the wireless space. There's lots of things that they're a part of. So many gaming services and communities Comcast has been a part of. For example, for anyone that plays Overwatch, if you guys aren't aware, Comcast is like a major funder of Overwatch League, like the competitive space for that game, among others.
I didn't even know they did gaming. So they would like sponsor, fund, kind of be part of setting up the different programs and events and things like that.
Literally like hosting the events. Like they were like a
Oh,
critical piece to hosting the games in Philly for Overwatch League, the Philadelphia team.
well,
Like
all right.
like
Well,
they really got their
that's their
teeth in there.
HQ
And
is Philly.
I mean, yeah, Comcast had offices in Philly, yeah. But like they're investing in so many different things, right? Like there's things they invest in when it comes to how we think about packet routing, and basically TLDR, and make it the simple version, into latency tech. They invest in the technologies to try to get latency lower and lower. For example, optimizing that. They invest in things when it comes to media consumption, and media consumption of technologies and formats is something Comcast participates in, is new standards for formats of compression for media. So like Comcast, it's not surprising to me that they're investing in this, because they invest in a lot of other things. That's been their track record for probably about 40 years now. And then same thing with AT&T, right? AT&T, they've also always been someone that invests, and this is literally right in their main playground. And they're probably looking for new ways to generate revenue off the network with these 5G builds, and they want to probably have a say in whatever the new standards are to meet their needs as well in the future. So none of this is really, the T-Mobile part is the most surprising piece to me. The AT&T and Comcast joining isn't that surprising. I was surprised they weren't there sooner.
Listen, man, you had me on everything except one thing. You
T-Mobile
said
leaving?
you said that T-Mobile doesn't like innovate, push forward the industry. Bro, they are the GOAT 5G network. All right. And not only are they the GOAT 5G network, but now they're going to be the GOAT 5G provider with relationships in fiber. All right. Fiber optic networks. They got this potential deal, according to Bloomberg's report, with Tillman Fiber Optic. So not only are they going to be the GOAT in 5G, they're going to be the GOAT in fiber optic. So they're in discussions with this company to get access to fiber optic infrastructure. The company builds in, I think, a handful of states. That brings T-Mobile as a player possibly to expand and embark on more of the fiber to the prem. And then I think also fiber to the tower site with respect to these like joint venture, wholesale, open platform fiber access networks. Look, I'm just saying, when you're the GOAT in 5G, it makes sense to be the GOAT in fiber. EM, come in, man. EM?
Oh, sorry, I had my mic muted. So I've been looking into this, and Tillman seems to do like an open access fiber network deployment similar to like how Utopia does it.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm understanding that right, Tillman's going to own the infrastructure, they're going to operate the infrastructure, and then T-Mobile is going to be an ISP brand that can be sold via that pipe. But T-Mobile doesn't really do networking like the other ISPs do. They pay everyone else to do it for them. So to me, this seems like just a brand front, and it's not actually going to lead to like a substantial improvement in their networking because they don't, again, they don't own anything. They would rather pay someone else to do it for them.
But EM,
And
they got Pilot Fiber in New York. They got the 2 cities where they're doing the T-Fiber in Colorado. This is another thing, man. We're gonna and I predicted way back when this is after Pilot and after the announcement of those 2 markets in Colorado. I said you're gonna be seeing like a quarterly announcement for additional fiber things, right? And now we're starting to see it. So I think the way we have to look at this is little steps continue for T-Mobile.
but it doesn't. It's not going to actually improve their wireless network. It's just another way for them to stick their brand on something that they didn't build and sell it. But they're not going to actually make any money off of it because they're not. They don't own it, right?
All right.
Like,
Okay. So let me get this straight. You're basically saying this is going to be exactly the same thing as what's going on in Colorado and in Manhattan with Pilot Fiber. You don't think it's going to be anything more than that?
correct, because that's what Tillman is. They like I said, they're an open access operator who's going to be making money off of hosting multiple ISPs on the same fiber pipe, same path.
All right, let me get B in on this. B, according to Mike Johnson, T-Mobile got the industry nervous. What do you got to say about this?
Nervous, man. What, man?
B's like, what? Go ahead, man.
That
Go
is
in.
ridiculous. Okay, so Ian, his assessment is absolutely correct. Um, this is a big yawn for me. I mean, this is a cheap way of saying we're getting into fiber. If you're really serious about owning fiber end to end, then go knock on Corning's door and buy some fiber and hire some fiber experts to help you build a fiber network. That's what you do if you want to become a fiber player. But constantly, T-Mobile plays in our face. Every time when it comes to technology, they play in our face. Like they lease spectrum, and now they're essentially leasing fiber, and they want us to congratulate them for progress. And it's like, yo, this is not progress. This is playing in the consumer's face. Exactly what it is. I'm not impressed.
Dennis, jump in.
So I actually think this is a really good thing for T-Mobile. I do think it's very similar, but not exactly identical to what they did with things like Pilot in New York. Um, Especially if this ends up being like a direct to consumer offering of like a fiber product in those areas. That being said, I disagree with them not being able to make money off this. I see them definitely making money off this in the same way they make some amount of money off of the Pilot deal. And I also do want to say that this is good for T-Mobile as a net whole, comparatively speaking. Depending on how the cost structure breaks down, like I imagine that somewhere in there, in their terms with Tillman, that there's probably an option for T-Mobile to be able to actually buy their own fiber, and buy their own, I mean like they own that line, or they own that pairing or that strand. I imagine that they probably have some type of option in there. Well, I do think it's important for a company the size of T-Mobile to deploy their own fiber holistically. I don't necessarily think that this baby step, as Sneed phrased it, is necessarily a bad thing either. I've gone on record many times in the past talking about how fiber infrastructure in the United States to me was always a little bit ass backwards. That like main backbone line should be a shared open resource, kind of like these, instead of being owned by like individual companies, because it just makes more sense from like a cost efficiency standpoint, and like logistically speaking. Like I just think of internet almost like a utility, right? You don't have multiple water lines coming into someone's house. So you can select between your water providers. You just have the one water line, and then you have your different companies that can charge to use said line to your house. I think of the internet kind of being like the same in that aspect. I guess one other thing I'll just point out, since B touched on this, is that a deal like this, I want to say, I think it's unfair to say that T-Mobile is not doing anything in the fiber space. I think it's more of a question of where the fiber starts to be run right. T-Mobile's making a lot of plays on last mile access. That's where T-Mobile's making a lot of the plays, whereas companies like AT&T, Verizon, they're making big investments to be the actual main highway, and T-Mobile's making investments just to be the little off-roads to get to people's homes in these specific situations, or in very rare circumstances, they may be connecting some of their own cell sites in very targeted manners where bandwidth needs justify it. But they're not making a large scale thing happen quite yet. Anyway, TLDR, I think this is exciting. I think that we're going to see, I think this story is more of a telling sign of what we're going to see in the future when it comes to fiber infrastructure in the United States, from telco, since this is going to be the way to maximize revenue generation of that infrastructure. And I think that this is a baby step, as you touched on, Sneed, that is still a net positive for T-Mobile and will definitely help them out in certain ways, whether it be, again, offering a consumer product where they're branding it and selling their own fiber that way, almost like an MVNO structure for fiber, or they might end up using Tillman in the future for powering small cells or other applications like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's official. We have a moose sighting. Cha-cha. That's right.
Damn.
So Cha-cha,
Have they
check
actually
it out,
announced?
right? So
I
Cha-cha,
apologize.
check
Go
this
ahead.
out.
I'm sorry.
We got AT&T Junior. T-Mobile is trying to do fiber.
No. It's not AT&T Junior. They're trying to be Verizon Junior. Okay. they're trying to maximize the amount of money that they're making per customer. Let's be real here, right? Let's be real.
Go on.
But anyways, not a big deal for me. Let them try whatever they got. But at the end of the day, if they're not going to be a true fiber provider with their own fiber and their own network and their own people, it's all a wash. Really.
Boom.
You know,
Exactly.
they have to buy a company. They really do. They have to buy a company. And then we'll see what happens. No, I think they're going to have to either buy Frontier or Lumen, correct? Or Lumen.
Even then, those
Or they
companies
could
don't.
just buy some fiber and hire some people and build it. What are we talking about? Just buy some fiber. It's cheaper to do that way.
Can we be realistic though? I mean, I know you're joking, but you say just buy some fiber. Fiber deployment is.
He's serious.
Well,
if you're gonna do it, he's being serious.
But I'm saying I'm trying to say, B, like, buying some fiber is more complicated than just buying some fiber, right? Like it is very it's a long, tedious like if T-Mobile started today with 10, let's just say T-Mobile decided to be really brazen. They're like, we're going to allocate $20 billion over the next 5 years to a fiber build out, right? That's what they said. I guarantee shovels hitting the ground and drill bits hitting the ground doesn't happen until like 2026 before they run their first mile of fiber, because of all the hurdles, the procurement of Corning, who has been essentially tapped out because everyone's buying Corning fiber. You're buying years out in advance before you get that glass. You got the legal aspects, the townships, the locality. Like, deploying fiber in the US is one of the most complicated shit shows I've ever seen for a modern first world country. It is so complicated for no reason, legally speaking, because there's no national like rules for it. It literally changes by the city. Like, it changes by the state. Each state's like a country, and then it changes by the local municipality. The local municipalities have so much power to influence these deployments, and it gets just super complicated and costly, and it makes it slow, makes the project slow. It's definitely worthwhile for T-Mobile, considering this is like the heart of their business. It would enable them to do a lot of interesting things, but
like in and of itself, the way it's structured, it doesn't seem clear that it's going to end up touching their wireless network, right? We're looking at a fiber to the prem situation, but I want to circle back to something Moose said. I said it was AT&T Junior. I looked at it like Carlos. It was like a cheaper version of a joint venture, but like Moose, you said it's more like Verizon Junior. I got to push back, dog. I don't think it's Verizon Junior.
No, because you have to take this holistically. Okay. T-Mobile is the only company that has raised prices and forces people to also go on their most expensive plan to get the best promotions for wireless. That's why I'm saying, and I'm putting my stake in the ground here, T-Mobile is acting more like Verizon every week, every month, than they're looking more like AT&T.
You really think so?
Well, I mean, with respect to revenue accretion, absolutely. If you're going to copy a playbook, you want to copy the one that makes the most money. So yeah, they are from a revenue standpoint, but at the same time, from a network build out, all this stuff that they're doing, it smells like AT&T. They've been doing AT&T Junior stuff for years now. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, are they mimicking Verizon as far as trying to make money? Yeah.
Let me pull the panel. EM, is the new T-Mobile moving like an AT&T Junior or a Verizon Junior?
Depends on how you toss the coin. If you're talking about the way that they present themselves to their customers, they're acting like Verizon. The way that they build their network, they're acting like a crappier version of AT&T. So I guess it goes both ways.
That's essentially what I just said.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
So
I
you guys
agree
are on
with
the
you.
same page.
Listen, let's just throw this out here. If Verizon and AT&T could get away with not having to do the cost of deploying fiber, I'm willing to bet that AT&T and Verizon wouldn't deploy the fiber. But the reason why they drew to that conclusion, but the reason why they came to that conclusion was because they realized that if they want to be able to provide the cellular infrastructure and coverage in some of these more interesting locations, it is beneficial to have control over it. They realized that to offer the enterprise services that they do, both for the government and for just large scale companies, that they needed to do it for these like direct connection between like large scale business hubs, for example, and other products and services that they offer. Like, it became like a requirement of just doing business, and that is why it happened. T-Mobile, for the most part, still doesn't really have a large enterprise play, right? Like, they just don't. They've mainly been a consumer to, let's call it medium, like small to medium sized business provider, essentially. And they just haven't had the need quite yet to justify is the wrong word, but like it made it so this type of investment becomes something that becomes a lower priority item to them, especially since they're already behind a little bit of an 8 ball as far as, you know, doing this infrastructure goes, right? Because there's already such a large gap between other competitors. So
Well, and that's exactly why this entire story of this Tillman thing is a nothing burger. Because T-Mobile's, like I said before, T-Mobile's going to be the brand front. They don't have wave infrastructure across the country. They don't have nationwide fiber routes. They don't have interconnects at data centers. They don't manage POPs. Like, they don't have any of the backbone infrastructure in order to call themselves a real ISP, because they just pay Zayo, or they pay Level 3, or they pay AT&T or Verizon to carry their traffic for them. Like,
which
T-Mobile
is ridiculous because they're a telco company that doesn't own fiber. And it's like, Dennis, I don't want to say you're defending it, because I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but it's just, how can we take them seriously? Why would an enterprise take them seriously? They don't own anything, spectrum or fiber. Like, Ian said, they're just a brand.
Defending
It's laughable. It's laughable, man.
Defending is the wrong word here. I'm not trying to defend T-Mobile as the company. I'm just trying to say that the decision that is being made here with this specific solution isn't necessarily a bad one, considering the position they're in and considering what I think of what they're trying to do. I don't think this is a bad play, like, at all. In fact, shared infrastructure is something very common in a lot of other countries, South Korea being one of them, between telco carriers. I know it's different in the United States, but it just depends on what the fine print of the deal is, right? Like, I don't know what the clauses are. I haven't seen the
Looks like it's just talks for now, Dennis. I don't see anything official.
But
But
I
I
don't
mean, if it's
necessarily
going to be
see it
structured
being
like pilot, maybe that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, but I don't see it being a bad thing, right? Like, in the same way, I think T-Mobile should approach AT&T and take advantage of the whole BlackRock deal. Get to be a fiber provider without having to invest in all the costs and start generating the revenue. And then I'm sure, depending on how you work out the deal, I'm sure somewhere along the lines you might be able to buy your own dedicated last mile fiber runs, so you own them at that point.
But they don't have like a build team. Like they would have to literally create a new business segment. Like Verizon has MCI, right? Like AT&T does like its own fiber. They have a team. They do contractors as well for installations, but like they're owner operator of their fiber. Like T-Mobile would be literally doing something they've never done before. They'd have to hire people. They'd need project managers. Like it would literally be from the ground up, right? That's why I think it would take a lot of time and very skilled talent that we've never seen T-Mobile embark on before. I mean, how far do you think we would be from that happening, Dennis, if you put it into years?
What, acquiring the human capital and setting up those teams?
Yeah.
You're talking 10 years. Minimum 10.
Moose, do you agree with Dennis that it could take about a decade to kind of get a true fiber segment going for T-Mobile?
5 years, but they'll be only focused on small business and regular consumer customers, because there's no way that they're going to be able to get the SLAs required for businesses. So this is going to be a shared experience with no SLA, absolutely no SLA.
Interesting.
So they're the number two. So they're the number 2 carrier in the country by customer count, and we're still talking about them like they're, a regional carrier. Like they're a national carrier. So I don't think it's,
according to some people, they'll tell you that T-Mobile's the number 1 because of market cap.
All right, fine. Well, then act like it. Use some of that market cap and purchase some fiber and hire some people who know fiber, or stop with the cap. No pun intended. I mean, we're talking. I don't understand why. It's just like they always get graded on a curve, and I don't know why that is. They're not an up and coming anymore. They got more customers than AT&T. Like Sneed, they have more customers than AT&T.
That's true.
So why are we still talking about them like, well, they're just no. This is a half-hearted attempt.
It's only if you count free lines, though. It's only if you
count. Well, they count them every quarter. So if they're counting them every quarter, then I'm going to count them now. So, like, if they're going to be a national player, which is what they tout themselves to be, then act like it. If you're the best network, best 5G network, okay, why don't you own any fiber? What are you going to do with WCO? When are you going to purchase your own spectrum?
I got to bring something up, B. I got to bring something up. I find it ironic that CEO of T-Mobile, Mike Sievert, last week said, yes, fixed wireless access is not as good as wireline. And everybody was shocked that he was willing to admit it, right? And then they do this. Right? Talks about wireline, talks about fiber, the pilot thing, the pilot business in Manhattan, the 2 markets for T-Fiber in Colorado. Right? Do you see how that all comes together? See, at first, it was fixed wireless access is going to change the game. We're going to wreck cable. which it has put a huge dent in cable's growth. They can't even. I mean, I think they're like net negative if you count Comcast losses last quarter. Right, fixed wireless did put a dent into the game, but now he's singing a different tune. Right when they start kind of doing this thing with fiber talks. What do you think of that, B?
Well, he's allowed to do that. He's just taking advantage of the moment because, again, they're the number 2 carrier in America by customer count, and people are still giving them the ability to be graded on. They're still grading them on a curve and acting like they're the T-Mobile from years past. And I'm saying to myself, okay, if they lead the industry in market cap, which is what Sneed said, and I agree, and they're number 2 in customer count, then why don't we have a standard where, for example, they have a QoS on their fixed wireless access product, or that they begin the process of at least trying to build a fiber network and trying to own their own spectrum? Like, wouldn't that be a require? If this was Verizon or AT&T, if the situations were switched or flopped, I mean, we wouldn't be saying this at all.
Can I jump in real quick? I'm sorry, but the trying piece, you used the word trying. T-Mobile has been trying to own their own spectrum. There's tons of news stories that's been covered by Sneed that talks about this whole thing. In fact, they've been very aggressive about trying to own their spectrum. And then as far as the fiber piece goes, I think they did try or they have tried, just not successfully, to own fiber in specific parts of the country, right? It just didn't go anywhere.
Didn't go there, yeah.
What?
They sold off
okay,
the
so
most
what
profitable portion of their fiber network that they acquired from Sprint for $1.
Exactly. Why do they do that?
You
Like, I mean,
most of the fiber they acquired from Sprint, went to literally like nowhere. Like it was like
Dennis, it went through major cities.
It was long haul fiber
they don't
routes
own any.
that Sprint has owned and operated for years.
You're misunderstanding what I mean when I say literally nowhere. I'm saying like a fiber run that connects the major East Coast cities, right? And then maybe like one that connects the coast as a whole would be like important fiber runs.
Yeah, but
Sprint had like fiber runs
every
going
state,
up to, like,
dog.
Sprint had like fiber runs going up to like Alaska. Like
where do T-Mobile's fiber runs go now? Do we have any fiber runs now?
What I'm trying to say is that like where the fiber goes is pretty important besides just owning fiber, right? Like fiber in Alaska isn't like super helpful, in my opinion, to a business, since there's not a lot of economic activity happening in the state of Alaska that requires the internet infrastructure that today, or I don't see it happening in the near future either, really. Major places that have fiber are places like your New Yorks, your Washingtons, your Philadelphia's.
I'm pretty sure Sprint was in every major continental state, dog.
I don't think they're
T-Mobile doesn't have fiber miles run anywhere. So to say Sprint's fiber network went nowhere, and that, I guess, downgrades, the quality or overall worth of that network doesn't make sense when T-Mobile doesn't have any at all anywhere. And they're supposed to be a major telco that's telling America, let us be your internet provider.
Let me ask Moose.
That's weird, man.
Let me ask Moose. Moose, do you think they should have kept the Sprint fiber backbone and upgraded it, managed it, and utilized that segment of the business as an asset?
They don't have the personnel required to do it.
That's what I was saying.
But
they got the largest market cap in the industry, though. They can hire some people. Like, don't they have more market cap than anybody else?
What I will say is this. You can already tell that they have problems if they can't even control their own network security. Okay? So that says volumes.
Yeah, you can't forget that. That's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, very, very recently this week, we had MGM properties across the United States get hacked. T-Mobile US has been hacked numerous times. If you do not have the right personnel and you are using third-party companies to make a Band-Aid network somehow magically be the supposed number one 5G network in the country, it's not going to happen, dog. It's not going to happen. Okay? It's just not. So they need to hire people. They need to hire an actual person that knows what the hell's going on with wireline, man. And network security. We're talking about connecting their major hubs: LA, New York City, Dallas, Atlanta, Miami,
Houston,
Chicago, San Francisco, and
Philly.
Seattle. Those are the main cities of the United States that they need to be connected direct fiber connection at minimum 500 gig backhaul.
Carlos said they're gonna hire a hamster and a ham sandwich. I don't even know what the hell. What's up, Rob? So you guys, I guess we're all kind of agreeing here. It's gonna be a long while before they make a legitimate fiber impact. I mean, what are we saying? A
One that
decade
would
out?
one that would allow them to compete to the level that other wave infrastructure providers, carrier Ethernet providers, as your Lumens, your AT&Ts, your
Right.
Verizons of the world. It would take them a very long time.
I mean, those guys have been in operations for decades.
Which is
Full-fledged decades, like, and we're talking about states covered, multiple states, counties covered. I mean, this ain't gonna be that, dog.
why I had a problem with them deciding to just give up the infrastructure to Cogent, because if you go to Cogent's website, they are providing, at least according to them, using the assets that they acquired from T-Mobile, carrier Ethernet, dedicated internet, global MPLS, wave service, SD-WAN, all of these major enterprise solutions that the other telcos have been doing for a long time that make them a very large amount of money. T-Mobile had an opportunity to nurture that and grow that segment of their business, and they chose not to.
All right, good stuff, guys. The show went beyond my expectation. I thought we were gonna get about an hour in. Looks like we went for about an hour and a half. I hope you guys enjoyed the
Hold up.
show.
Hold
Oh,
up.
Moose, you got something else?
What happened to what we talked about, Cha-Cha?
Cha-Cha, you still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Up.
All right, we got to talk about this. So, iPhone 15 Pro. Okay. Today was the pre-order day, effectively part one of the launch day.
How'd it go, Moose?
Significant. Significant.
Significant.
Significant. That's the best adjective that I can say right now. There was an article that came out earlier today that the X70 on the iPhone is almost 25% better than the X65 on the iPhone 14 Pro.
What does that mean exactly?
Speed.
Like, what is that?
25% faster speed in speed tests amongst all the three carriers in the US. So, that being said, I wanted to talk to the panel. Is the X70 that big of a deal? Or is it because the X70 is more in tune with SA, 5G SA, right? That's why the quote unquote 24% increase between generations is there.
Do we know I mean, it all just depends on the configurations on the carrier, right, Moose?
That's right.
So,
Absolutely.
so we're gonna have to look at bandwidth. We're gonna have to look at bands, frequencies. That's interesting because when we were looking at the spec list, we didn't see anything specifically unique that should have shown a 25% improvement.
I mean, the only thing that we confirmed, right, when we looked at Qualcomm's website is that they added a additional 5G SA carrier aggregation. right?
So it could be additional bandwidth then?
Well, I mean, that's if the carrier in the United States has 4 bands of SA turned on, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting. But you know, it's so disappointing, man. I wish the iPhone came out earlier in the year so that it was a direct comparison with the Galaxy, because the Galaxies are going to leap forward in the beginning of the year, and they're just always out and ahead when it comes to innovative cellular performance. It's always the Galaxy as the gold standard. You know, you can access the service mode. You know, you get the best antenna technologies and performances. You know, you're getting cutting edge tech with the modem. It's just always better. You know, and obviously you get the best version of the iPhone, but that's not the best version of a smartphone with respect to cellular performance. You know what I'm saying, Moose?
no, of course, but remember, close to 80% of the US market is iPhone.
It's 80%.
Oh, yeah. Dude,
Sheesh.
it's very
So
abysmal
that
when it
means
comes to
it's a
Android.
larger discrepancy now than ever.
Let me tell you
Well,
this. The only folks that I know that actually have the best flagship phone, which is an S series Galaxy, are either folks that love Samsung or they're network enthusiasts that want the best and the best. But the majority of the United States consumers have an iPhone.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just say this. As far as the new modem goes, I don't think it's gonna matter that much. I think that people that have iPhone 14s with the current tech that's in there, or even iPhone 13s, even as long as you're not on AT&T, uh, are doing just fine right now for where carriers are in their network build. Like, I we're not seeing four-way carrier ag happening really on midband that I'm aware of, on standalone that I'm aware of. I don't even think I don't think any of the carriers even have enough spectrum to do that right now, right? Like for Verizon, it's one thing of low band, possibly two things N77. Like that's the combo that they could do on standalone. T-Mobile, it's some
Well,
standalone
they got a low
700.
band option too with like band 5, right? And I guess they can do N2, N66.
Yeah,
Not that it would bring
maybe,
incredible throughput because of aggregation. Those channels are pretty skimpy.
maybe. Yeah, I mean
I guess
T-Mobile's
with
got like
N48, CBRS could be a player, right?
yeah. I mean the only place where I see this mattering is millimeter wave, but even then there was already 8-way carrier ag for millimeter wave. It wasn't like the
Millimeter
sub-6.
wave needs a MIMO upgrade more than any. The bandwidth is plenty. It needs
Yeah.
better MIMO.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I plan to get an iPhone 15, but this time around it isn't actually the wireless antenna that's motivating me. It's more of like
All
Thunderbolt
right,
and USB-C.
we got to talk about this. Carlos, stop the cap, bro. There is nothing better about AT&T's or excuse me, uh, Apple's iPhone cellular performance over the model year flagship from the Galaxy. No, sir. That is cap. It's just not the case. My S22 performs better on cellular than my iPhone 14 Pro Max.
Well, since you're making this comparison, one thing I've noticed is that my iPhone typically gets higher uplink speeds than my S22. My
And my
S22 always
Pixel
has,
gets better uplink speeds than my than my iPhone. And everybody shits on the Pixel.
but look, um, I'm gonna just say it right now. Like, as far as everyone should be buying a 5G phone. Let's just start with that. Everyone should be buying a 5G phone. As far as enhancements to the X70, cool. This will definitely be beneficial in the future, but I don't necessarily see it being the thing that is the most beneficial today, if that makes sense.
I'll also go out on a limb and say, if you're coming out of a 13 or a 14, I probably wouldn't buy a 15. If you're upgrading to an iPhone 15, make it a Pro, right? Going from like a 14 Pro to a 15 makes no sense. Make sure you're getting the right piece of hardware you want, you know.
For me, the big reason is Thunderbolt and USB-C. Those are the big
Thunderbolt.
Yeah,
They
USB.
don't support some Thunderbolt.
The new Pros have 10 gig transfer speeds via USB-C.
USB-C, man, all things.
And
I was there was USB 3.0 standard for the Pro and 2.0 for the regular.
The Pro is able to export to a display, which would be, I guess it wouldn't be Thunderbolt. It'd still be USB 3 standard, but it's able to export to a display as well, which is nice. Look, point is USB-C. That's a big motivating factor for me to want an iPhone 15 Pro.
What are you going to do with all your cables, dog?
Probably nothing with them because I'll still have the old iPhone 14. But when I do things like traveling to the Netherlands, like I am right now, it'll be so nice to only have to worry about bringing USB-C cables with me.
I'd love to ask Carlos, what is he going to do with all his cables? That dude's got like 15 cables in the car and the Mini and around the house and at the office and all that, and he's got like a million phones.
But yeah, USB-C legitimately is like the thing that I've been wanting forever on iPhone. One cable to rule it all. That's a very big convenience that I'm willing to pay for.
I want RCS on iPhone. That's all I want.
Well, that's RCS. A software. That's a software thing.
That's all I want. I don't need anything else from Apple. I just want RCS compatibility.
But on a side note, yeah. Did you want to talk about Netherlands at all?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
So, yeah, guys, I'm in Amsterdam right now as we're speaking, chilling in my Hilton hotel. And I have been getting to enjoy the Netherlands carriers. And the first thing I just want to say is that internet sucks in the Netherlands really bad. From the wireless side, there's a few companies that you can be on. There's KPN NL, which think of them as like the Verizon of the Netherlands. They have like the best coverage pretty much everywhere. There's a company called Odido, which was formerly T-Mobile, but it became Odido.
So Dennis, you're telling me T-Mobile's the GOAT in 5G, even in the Netherlands?
Actually, unironically, Odido is actually really good. So
see, 5G GOAT everywhere you go. They're inevitable.
I'm just saying unironically, like they're actually pretty good. But
see that B? You see that B? The 5G GOAT in the Netherlands, dog.
But as far as cellular connectivity goes, all the roaming, all the carriers suck at roaming here. Verizon bad, T-Mobile bad, AT&T bad. The pings are really high because they get routed to the US. Out of the three, T-Mobile is actually probably the best at roaming.
Yeah.
Followed by Verizon, and then AT&T would actually be last if we're talking about overall performance and latency here specifically. I wanted to get a domestic SIM really bad, and I would recommend it to anyone, but getting a domestic SIM for an iPhone 14 that's eSIM only is literally like impossible.
They're still selling international models with a SIM tray, right, Dennis?
What's up?
The 15 generation iPhone international model has a SIM tray?
I assume so, yeah. So they did with the 14s. But yeah, being eSIM only really sucks over here. Because so there are carriers that offer eSIM, but they're basically like postpaid essentially. Like in order to get them, you need to have a freaking Netherlands address and a bunch of identity stuff, and it's really just impossible as like a tourist to get it. And then on the prepaid side, all the prepaid ones are doing physical SIM activations. Like eSIM just like not an option, which really sucks. I'm very sad. because the roaming performance is not great. It's not great. But yeah, in fact, my laptop that I'm talking to you on is actually roaming off of cellular right now. Hopefully, it hasn't been too bad. I don't know what the latency is doing, but I mean, yeah. As far as Wi-Fi goes, Wi-Fi is available in a lot of places, but it's slow. Like it's fiber, but it's slow. It's slow for fiber, and it's also not great. So TLDR, the thing that I've learned so far while I've been here is that despite what RootMetrics might say, or not RootMetrics, Ookla might say about internet speeds here, the internet sucks here in the Netherlands, that it makes me miss the US and our connectivity. Even like T-Mobile, the people that on this panel that like to laugh at like T-Mobile domestic, is leaps and bounds better than what I've been experiencing over here from a connectivity piece.
See that, EM? T-Mobile, the GOAT in the Netherlands, dog.
I guess.
That's right. That's right, B. GOAT in the
From
Netherlands, dog.
Mike Seaver's got it going on.
Nobody cares about the Netherlands.
I will say the pricing over here though is pretty interesting compared to the United States though, from a pricing standpoint. One of the things that I find really cool here is that all like the Dutch plans, what they do is they'll sell you like a bunch of data for roaming across all of the EU included in your plan, which is pretty nice. And then remember how we talked about unlimited plans and how I had a want for just like a guaranteed speed or something like that? Yeah, they got speed tiers here on their packages. Like they have plans where they sell them at like 10 meg, up to 300 meg, up to 600 meg. Like they sell them like that for like unlimited. There is no like video cap. They just sell like speed tiers, which I found really interesting for their unlimited offerings. So that was something extremely interesting. And
easier to do when you have a population density that's a lot lower and overall population that's a lot lower than the US.
I said up to was the keyword. I actually see that happening in the US though with 5G. I can totally see Verizon coming out with some new unlimited plans in the future where they say this plan sells up to 100 meg. This plan sells up to 300 meg. I could see them doing that. Marketing and
so
monetizing
speed tiers on mobile users.
Yeah, I can see it.
Maybe a topic for another. Maybe a topic for another video though, Dennis, because I think you'd have to explore bitrate, cost, thresholds, and how you do that on a 5G network core. You know what I'm saying? Like that could probably get its own dedicated podcast, maybe. It's a big.
Also, Carlos, on the topic of calling, that's the problem. I don't have a Dutch number. But
I was looking at the iPhone specs this year. They don't specify support for VoNR at all, nor compatibility with Dish.
They have to have VoNR support
when they support SA5G. I mean, voice over NR is the calling standard.
Also, the iPhone 14, doesn't it have VoNR support? I'm pretty sure on T-Mobile.
Voice over NR?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Anybody know?
I'm pretty sure because in Utah.
The Cha-Cha might know. Moose?
Well, I know on T-Mobile they probably leased the 5G core too.
Yeah, they do. It is accessible.
Verizon caps video on home internet, so why not? That's what David said. In reference to the 1080p home internet solution from Verizon.
Also, Carlos, I just want to say really quickly, it's nice to not be connected all the time, so you're not getting bothered from like work notifications or something. But let me just tell you, it really sucks when you're trying to order an Uber and Uber's saying it can't connect because your ping back to the States is 500 milliseconds.
Damn.
You're just randomly stuck. And or basically TLDR, one thing I've learned while I've been here is if you don't have a smartphone, you're royally screwed. Like you're not getting around for the trains. Like I just took the trains today. I finally figured that out. Very nice, by the way. But if you don't have a phone, you are just absolutely screwed. You're not getting around anywhere around here. You need a phone to order your tickets. You need a phone to do a lot of things. So having a data connection is very helpful.
Which phones you seeing over there, Dennis? What's the hardware?
Oh, most people have Android over here. Most people have Android over here. If you have an iPhone, let me put it to you this way: if you have an iPhone, it's very easy for me to know that you're probably a tourist. Like if you have an iPhone, you're probably a tourist. You're probably either from the UK or America. If you
Is
have
it
an
just
iPhone here.
cost? Is it just the imports with the Apple iPhone tax just heavy?
I can't tell you the reason that it's like that, but I'm gonna say a big reason actually. This is just a guess. But back home, right in America, we text a lot. Like, we traditionally text a lot. And so iMessage became like super popular because it's a lot better than texting. And that's what everybody uses, like the blue bubble life. Over here, everyone uses WhatsApp. So like iMessage isn't a selling factor because everybody uses WhatsApp. Like that's just what you
Yeah,
use.
good point, Dennis. Facts.
So
Yeah.
I think that one of like the big selling points for the everyday consumer just isn't a selling point because everyone's using WhatsApp anyway while they're here. And then, I mean, I think cost might be part of it, but I also think it's because like over here they have a lot more selection for phones, right? Like back home we don't have Huawei's and Xiaomi's and
Oh,
everything else.
you see all that over there?
Yeah,
Oh,
Huawei,
okay.
Xiaomi's, Fairphone. Like, there's a lot more phone options over here from like companies. You probably got, I'm not even joking. I think you had like 25 different brands of smartphone to choose from at your typical like smartphone store. 25 versus like in the US, you've got like 4. You got Samsung, Apple, Google, and Motorola. Like those are your 4 choices. You have like 25 over here. You got Nokia over here still. Like Nokia is like a thing. So I think it's a little bit of like 3 parts, right? Like it's 1, iPhones are expensive. 2, there's more choice. So it's not like you can't find a quality phone that is comparable to an iPhone. And then 3 is just like, I think 3 is just support too, right? Like back home, one of the reasons why iPhone is also so popular is because iPhone is so popular. It's the thing that's supported by like all the carriers. It's the thing that's supported with a bunch of third-party accessories and stuff like that. Whereas over here, more of that support goes to Android. Like if you go to a shop to buy a charger, you're gonna see USB-C cables before you see a Lightning cable. Like, yeah. I'm just guessing, really, but
good stuff, Dennis. Thanks for sharing that, and I'm sure we'll be talking more kind of behind the scenes as you kind of like, do some more of your explorations of the country, and I know I'm interested. Who knows? Maybe the
yeah.
SMT makes it a world tour to Europe one of these days.
I mean,
And
come get a coffee. Buy a stand of coffee in Amsterdam. Take them to a coffee shop. If anyone's been to Amsterdam, you'll know what I mean.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for hanging out. Big shout out to Moose who came and went, and then BEM Dennis. Thank you guys for stopping by tonight. We'll make that the kind of the cutoff point. 1 hour 46 minutes. We held it down. We covered some good stories, great insights, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Everybody in the live chat, hit me with your favorite hashtag and comment on any of the topics if you're on the replay crew. So hashtag replay crew. And
Dennis, be safe, man.
Yeah,
Thank
be
you,
safe,
B.
Dennis. Enjoy the rest of the trip,
Turn off
man.
your phone for a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Disconnect. See you guys.
Peace.